Put your hands where I can see them. The voice cracked like a whip across Terminal B. People turned. Phones came out. A toddler started crying. He was standing there, black man, dark navy suit, leather briefcase in hand. Boarding pass still visible between the fingers. Calm. Controlled. To calm. Maybe. 3 officers surrounded him. One already had cuffs in his hand. No sudden moves. Step back. I haven't done anything, he said, voice low but steady. The TSA agent, a young man with a tight jaw and tighter haircut, didn't flinch. You matched a profile. We need to check. A white couple in matching Patagonia turned to stare. Someone whispered, "Did he just say profile?" He barely blinked. My ID's right there. Wallet, right side. But they didn't check the wallet, didn't ask his name. One officer stepped forward, grabbed his wrist, twisted, clicked, cold steel snap closed. A woman nearby gasped, "You're arresting him for what?" But the lead officer just muttered, "People like you shouldn't be in first class anyway." That silence, it wasn't shock. It was the kind of silence where people know what's happening is wrong, but no one wants to be the one to speak first. Have you ever felt that? That moment when the world sees you but only through the wrong lens. Because right then, he wasn't a CEO, not a veteran, not a man heading to a private national security summit. Just a black man in a nice suit at the wrong gate. And the scariest part, he knew this wasn't the first time. Wouldn't be the last. But still he stayed silent, let them finish locking his other wrist. Let them push him to the floor. Knees bruising on the polished tile. Why didn't he fight back? That's the question a kid asked out loud, watching from a nearby bench. Why isn't he yelling? Because some men don't need to raise their voice to raise hell. And in less than 2 minutes, everything those cops thought they knew about him was going to shatter. Have you ever seen someone hold back until the exact right moment? If so, tell me one word you'd use to describe the kind of power. Because the next thing he said didn't just silence the terminal. It made Washington answer the phone. The cuffs clicked into place again. He was now fully restrained, both wrists behind his back, cheek pressed to the airport floor. Cold tile, lights flickering overhead. And then, he spoke. Echo 17 Gamma. Initiate fallback protocol. Confirm with Central Command. The officer nearest him blinked. What? He didn't repeat it to the cop. He spoke louder, calm, measured, as if reciting something rehearsed. This is Delta clearance. Repeat, Delta clearance. Fall back now. Patch me through to the Pentagon. People around stopped recording. They stared. One TSA agent took a step back, whispering, "What did he just say?" A man in a military-style jacket muttered, "That's not some code from a movie, that's real." The officer holding him tightened his grip, trying to mask the confusion. "You trying to threaten us with what?" Fake jargon. But his radio crackled. Not local channel. A voice, clipped and urgent. "Unit 4, stand down. Immediately. That man has authorization on Delta tier." The cop froze. What? Who is he? The radio voice sharpened. Repeat. Remove cuffs. Now. Director en route. Do not escalate. Every officer looked at each other. One took a step back. From the corner, a little girl asked her mom, Is he a superhero?" Not quite. He was something rare. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He just knew who to call. Let me ask you this. If you saw someone humiliated in public, then calmly make a single call that changed everything, what would you do? Would you believe your eyes? Or assume it's all just a bluff? The officer started fumbling at the cuffs, hands trembling. But it was too late. Phones had captured it all. The whispering turned into murmurs, then voices. Who is this guy? Did he say Pentagon? I think he said Central Command. The TSA supervisor ran in, sweating, phone still in hand. We were verifying credentials, sir. Just standard procedure. But the man didn't look at him. He simply said, You've got 90 seconds before the call finishes bouncing up the chain. That was the moment the airport went completely still. No one moved. No one dared speak. An outside gate C4, 2 men in black suits had already begun walking toward the glass doors. But here's the thing. The people in that terminal hadn't even seen the real twist yet. Because next he would say the name of someone that made even Washington stop breathing. So tell me, if someone mentioned a name that could shake a government, what kind of name do you think that would be? Drop one guess in the comments. And hold tight, because what happens when those men in black reach him? That's when it stops being a mistake and becomes a reckoning. The sliding glass doors parted with a soft hiss. 2 men in tailored black suits entered. No badges, no flashes, no unnecessary movements. Just presence. Their shoes barely made a sound against the polished floor. But somehow, the crowd knew to part, even without being told. The first one wore thin, dark-framed glasses and carried a silver case. The other had an earpiece but no visible mic. They didn't scan the room. They walked straight to him. The black man still knelt calmly on the floor, cuffed, eyes steady. But now his gaze shifted slightly. He had seen them coming long before anyone else did. One of the suited men spoke two words, quietly. Identification phrase. The kneeling man replied without hesitation, Echo Line. Alpha Red, 04. The agent didn't nod, didn't smile, just took out a small scanner from the silver case. Scanned the cuffed man's retina, then his voice. Beep, green light, then silence again. The crowd had gone dead quiet. Phones no longer moved as if everyone realized they might be filming something they weren't supposed to see. The agent turned to the officers. You made contact without scanning identity. You violated 3 federal protocols. The cop in charge stuttered. He looked suspicious. You judge by suit and skin. You didn't ask for name. You didn't run clearance. You went straight to force. His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough. You know the kind of voice, right? The kind that doesn't need to shout because it already commands something deeper than fear. The agent stepped forward, tapped the cuff release. Click. Metal dropped to the floor. The black man stood up slowly. His posture didn't change. No glares, no smug look, just calm. The kind of calm people remember. Then he said the name, not loudly, just to the agents. But it was enough that one officer near him heard it. His face drained. Wait, did he just say the general? The name echoed in the officer's mind not because it was famous, but because it wasn't supposed to be said out loud. And yet this man didn't whisper it in fear. He delivered it like a command, like he wasn't just allowed to say the name, but maybe he was the only one who could. And that's when a ripple passed through the room, because names have power, and sometimes saying the right one is more devastating than a bullet. And that name, it wasn't earned in a boardroom. It was earned in a sandstorm 14 years ago, in a place where loyalty meant life, and one phone call could command a fleet. Let me take you back to where it began. Before I tell you what he did in that desert, I know you might be busy. Maybe you've got errands to run or your mind can only handle so much drama at once. But if stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because what happened next, it explains everything. 14 years earlier, the wind screamed across the dunes like something alive. Fine sand whipped through the air, stinging exposed skin and slipping into boots, gear, even sealed eyes. Inside a forward operating base in the middle of nowhere, a 26-year-old soldier sat in a dimly lit briefing tent. It was him, but younger, leaner, not a wrinkle on his brow yet. No designer suit, no polished watch, just desert camo, a rifle across his chest, and eyes that didn't blink easily. He wasn't the commander. He wasn't even supposed to lead the day. The man in charge had been flown out after a roadside blast hit the convoy. Half the team was scattered, the rest were shaken. And the storm, that storm was closing in fast. If you've never been inside a sandstorm, let me paint it for you. Visibility less than defeat. Breathing like inhaling needles. Radio, dead. GPS, blind. Evac, hours away. And some voice on the wire had just whispered, "We have movement inside the perimeter." That's when he stood up. No rank on his sleeve gave him the right, but something else did, and the room quieted. A captain cleared his throat. "You got something to say, Private?" But he didn't look at him. He pointed to the map. to a blind spot no one else had noticed. They're not testing defenses. They're funneling us. He tapped 3 points. Send men here, and here now. Pull the rest back 10 meters. Cut the lights. Let them think we can't see. Someone scoffed. Who do you think you are? He didn't answer. He just moved. And when the shots started, they came exactly from the spot he'd circled. The chaos was instant. But because of him, half the team had already repositioned. And while bullets hissed through the wind and soldiers scrambled behind cover, he sprinted into the open, dragged men back under fire, then disappeared into the sand. For 23 minutes, no one knew where he'd gone. Then one flare, one silhouette returning. He was carrying someone not in uniform, an informant, the only man who knew the coordinates to a weapon stash that had been hidden for years. That informant had run during the attack, but he brought him back, alive. And when the Pentagon reviewed the footage, when commanders traced how close that ambush came to ending 30 American lives, they didn't see a private anymore. They saw someone who saw the battlefield like a chessboard. And from that day forward, he was no longer just Sir. They gave him a name, the code name, the same name he whispered at the airport. And that name, it opened doors. It closed mouths. It made even generals pause before raising their voice. But that day in the desert, it didn't end there. Because someone who shouldn't have been watching saw what he did. And years later, that man would try to bury the memory. But our CEO, he never forgot his face. So before I tell you what happened when they met again in Washington, let me ask you, would you forgive the man who once tried to erase you? Or would you wait for the perfect moment to return the favor? Because when they crossed paths again, only one of them remembered everything, and only one of them still had power. Washington, 3 months before the airport incident, a private charity gala, white linen tables, crystal glasses, laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. It was the kind of room where no one wore name tags because everyone already knew who mattered. He stood near the back, no spotlight, no stage presence. Just a black suit, glass of water, and silence. And across the room there he was, Colonel James Weller, polished, decorated, smiling like the war had never touched him, like the desert had never happened. He was laughing with a senator, wine in hand, medals gleaming under chandelier light. Weller hadn't seen him yet, but the CEO, he saw everything. His mind didn't jump back to the bullets, or the sand, or even the name that had saved lives. It jumped to the moment after the mission when Weller had filed the report that omitted his name, the one that credited the rescue to a coordinated team effort with no mention of the private who saw the ambush coming, no mention of the man who ran into the storm. That report made Weller a hero. It made the CEO disappear. Until now, he walked toward the bar, not directly at Weller, but close enough. Weller noticed, paused mid-sentence. Their eyes locked, just for a second, and then nothing. Weller turned back to his circle, raised a glass, kept laughing. But his fingers gripped the stem tighter. He recognized him. He just wasn't ready to admit it. Have you ever seen someone try to pretend the past doesn't exist? Like if they ignore you hard enough, your truth will stay buried. Because that's exactly what Weller did. And our CEO? He didn't confront. He didn't cause a scene. He did something worse. He waited for the next gala, for the right crowd, for the moment everyone would be listening. And in the meantime, he started making calls. Not loud ones, not to the press, but to people who remembered. Old unit commanders, silent figures in dusty corners of defense bureaus. Men whose loyalty wasn't for sale. He sent them one clip, footage from the drone archive. The flare, the silhouette, the man carrying the informant out of the storm. He didn't say a word. He just waited. And one by one, they began to reply. Not with emails, with visits, with classified folders, with signatures. A quiet reckoning began to form. But it still wasn't enough. Because Weller didn't just erase his name. He used it. Used the mission and the memory as a stepping stone to build an entire political brand. Now he wasn't just a colonel. He was weeks away from a Pentagon promotion. And that was the moment our CEO knew. This wouldn't be settled with medals. It would be settled with truth. But not in private, not in whispers. The next time Weller's name echoed across a room, it would come from his lips, in front of an audience that couldn't look away. And if you've ever waited years for justice, not revenge, but justice, then you know the patience that burns deeper than rage. Because what he said next, at the second gala, wasn't loud, but it ended a man's future. I'll tell you exactly what those 5 words were. But first, have you ever had someone steal your story and wear it like a badge? If so, what would you say to them? Think about that, because next you'll hear what he said aloud and how the entire room froze. It was the Defense Future Summit Gala, held in the East Atrium of the National Archives, a place meant to honor truth. Weller stood under a banner that read Valor, Vision, Victory. He wore a deeper shade of navy this time, sharper suit, bigger smile, same lie. Senators, generals, private defense contractors, all mingling beneath the rotunda, sipping aged scotch, praising the hero of Echo Ridge. And then the microphone turned on. There wasn't supposed to be a speech yet. Weller blinked, confused, as the host looked to the side, startled. But the black man was already walking up the marble steps. No spotlight followed him. He didn't need one. Just footsteps. Just silence. Just a small black case in his hand. He reached the podium, opened the case, pulled out a single item, a military-issued flare, the exact kind used 14 years ago, held it up, wordlessly. Someone in the crowd gasped. He set it on the podium, leaned in, and said 5 words. I carried him through gunfire. The room froze. No one clapped. No one spoke. Weller stood rooted, face unreadable. But a general near him turned, slowly. You. What did he say? Then the screen behind the stage flickered on. Not a slideshow. Not a logo. It was grainy footage. Sand swirling. Bullets slicing through the haze. A silhouette dragging another man through the storm. The same silhouette from the classified files. But now no longer anonymous. Zoomed. Enhanced. Face revealed. Him. The black soldier. Not Weller. Not the man who'd been taking credit all these years. Him. The whispers started first. Then the clicks of phones. Then the questions. Is that real footage? Wait, that's not Weller. He lied. Weller took one step forward, mouth open. But the CEO, now fully seen, spoke again. General Weller filed the report that earned him a medal. He held up a printed copy. Nowhere in it is the truth. He laid it down gently, not angry, not triumphant, just precise. Then stepped back from the mic, letting the silence fill the room. Weller tried to speak, but someone else did first. A voice from the audience. Quiet told her, I was there that year. I remember the boy who ran back into the storm. And suddenly, others joined in. Many women, former soldiers. They'd been watching from the sidelines, waiting to. And now, the dam broke. One by one, they stepped forward. They didn't raise fists. They raised truths. Piece by piece, the lie Weller had built began to unravel. And there, in the very building meant to preserve history, history rewrote itself. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He simply revealed. Because some men don't seek revenge. They restore reality. But the fallout, though, it was just beginning. Because the Pentagon didn't like public embarrassments. And Weller had just become one. But let me ask you this. If your lie got you to the top, would you rather lose everything publicly or admit the truth before someone forced you? Because next, Weller's team will scramble. Damage control will begin. But it's already too late. Because the call's been made. And this time, it's not just footage going viral. It's a full investigation. And careers, they're about to be shredded. The footage hit defense networks within hours. By morning, it wasn't just trending, it was encrypted, dissected, analyzed by high-clearance terminals from Langley to Quantico. But one building responded faster than the rest. The Pentagon. 3 red folders landed on a mahogany desk before sunrise, each stamped with a seal. Security compromise internal priority. Inside, one name, one act of omission, one man who lied under oath. Weller. But the memo didn't stop there. Attached were names of those who backed him, promoted him, covered for him. It wasn't a scandal. It was a system unraveling from the inside. Meanwhile, Weller, he still hadn't spoken. His team tried a peer statement about fog of war, memory distortion, team valor. But it was too late. A retired general went live on a broadcast and said, "I read the boy's name 14 years ago. I knew he saved lives, and I regret staying quiet." Suddenly, the silence cracked wide open. Have you ever seen a lie so big it needed dozens of other lies just to hold it together? And when the first one falls, the rest collapse like dominoes. Behind closed doors, committee rooms lit up. The office of the Inspector General pulled case files from archives no one had touched in a decade. They weren't just investigating Weller now. They were reopening every mission he had led. And our CEO? He never gave another speech. Didn't go on TV. Didn't post a single word online. He just returned to work. Same black suit. Same quiet confidence. But now, when people saw him in hallways, they stood a little straighter. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. Because some victories don't need applause. They just need the truth to stand long enough for the lie to fall. And yet, even as Weller's world burned, there was one person who hadn't reacted. A civilian official in Defense Intelligence. The one who had pushed Weller's promotions behind the scenes. The man who once said, "We don't care who drags bodies. We care who signs papers." He wasn't just complicit. He was protected. And he was still standing. But not for long. Because remember that phone call made at the airport? The one that shook command? It was routed through more than clearance codes. It carried a file with his name on it, buried for years, but not anymore. And that's where the real storm starts. Because next, we're not just exposing a liar, we're going after a kingmaker. And if you thought Weller's fall was brutal, wait until you see what happens when the puppet master gets dragged into daylight. You ever hear of Harold M. Klein? No, exactly the way he wanted it. He never wore medals, never gave press interviews, but his signature? It showed up on promotion memos, classified clearance approvals, funding channels that turned field soldiers into national figures. He was the kind of man who could turn whispers into orders without ever being in the room. And now, thanks to one airport call, his name was no longer buried. See, that file the CEO pushed up the chain? It didn't just expose Weller. It included correspondence emails, private briefings, even handwritten annotations proving Klein fast-tracked Weller, knowing his record was inflated. Why? Because Klein needed a clean military face for a future campaign. Someone with no messy race dynamics. Someone who looked like their idea of command. So he took the real hero out of the photo and replaced him with a cardboard cutout. But this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about leverage, and the CEO knew it. That's why he never confronted Klein publicly. He did something more dangerous. He requested a meeting. Private, no cameras, no aides. Just two men, a locked room, and a sealed envelope. It took place at the Hay Adams Hotel, Suite 714. Klein arrived first, stiff-backed, jaw set. He didn't shake hands, just sat. "Tell me what you want," he said, curt. But the CEO didn't answer right away. He opened the envelope, laid out 3 documents. A signed memo approving Weller's metal post fabrication. A redacted file showing transfer of patriotic outreach funds into Klein's private shell firm. A photograph taken 12 years ago. Klein, Weller, and a dead informant whose body was never supposed to be found. The room went silent. Klein didn't blink. "You think blackmail scares me?" he said. But the CEO finally looked up, calm. "This isn't blackmail," he said. "This is history correcting itself." And then the killer line. "You built your house on erased names. I'm just taking mine back." Klein stood, jaw tight. "This will bury you." But the CEO just smiled. "I've already been buried," he said. "Now I dig." That line, it hit harder than a threat. Because it wasn't just defiance. It was truth. Truth from someone who had already lost everything once and had nothing left to fear. Have you ever sat across from someone who held your future in their silence? Would you stay calm, or would you strike first, hoping to stay in control? Because when Klein left that room, he didn't call lawyers. He called someone else. Someone he hadn't spoken to in 10 years. Because if he was going down, he'd make damn sure he wasn't going alone. And that's when things got dangerous. Because next the CEO receives a visitor. Someone from the past. Someone who once saved him. And this time, they're not here to reminisce. They're here to warn him. Klein's making moves. He's calling in debts, real dangerous ones. And once debts start getting paid in this game, blood usually follows. It was raining when she arrived. Long coat, hood up, no driver. She didn't call ahead, didn't text. But he opened the door before she knocked. Thought you were in Jordan, he said. I was, she replied. Then I got the signal. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. Because sometimes, when someone's pulled you from the rubble, there's nothing left to prove. Her name was Raina, former field asset, embedded with intelligence units so deep her passport had 5 names and no country. She saved his life once back when both were ghosts on the chessboard. And now she was here, because Klein had moved. He's activating sleeper contracts, she said, dropping a flash drive on the table. Not to silence you, to erase you. He didn't flinch, but his fingers tightened slightly on the glass in his hand. Why now? He asked. Because you did something he didn't expect, she said. You exposed him and didn't ask for anything. You left him no leverage. She slid him a photo. It showed a man, tall, quiet eyes, Slavic tatted just visible beneath his collar. Ex-FSB, she said, used to extract assets, now hired to remove them. No one in DC knew the man's real name, but in circles that didn't speak aloud, they called him Silence. And Klein had brought him in. Should I be afraid? He asked. No, Raina said. But you should stop walking alone at night. There was a pause. Then she added, and stop assuming the truth protects you. In their world, truth is just a slow weapon. Have you ever told a truth so big that powerful people started shaking? And instead of denying it, they decided to eliminate the messenger. That's where he was now. Not in a court case. Not in politics. But in survival. So he did something he hadn't done in years. He opened the encrypted box in his study. Inside, a satellite phone, an old patch from Echo Ridge, and a name etched on metal. Not his. Hers. The woman who trained him. The one person even Klein feared. She was supposed to be dead. But if anyone could survive off the grid, it was her. He powered on the satellite phone, dialed the number carved into his memory. 1 ring, 2, then a voice. Raspy, cautious. You shouldn't be using this line. It's me, he said. Silence. Then, took you long enough. She didn't ask why he was calling. She just said one thing. If Klein sent him, you've got 72 hours. Then she hung up. No goodbye. No promises, just 72 hours. That's all he had before Silence reached DC. So what would you do if you only had 3 days to survive, not because you did something wrong, but because you finally did something right? Next, the CEO disappears, but not to run, to prepare. Because if he's going to face Silence, he won't do it defensively. He's going to draw him out into the open. And what happens in that warehouse? Even the agency won't be able to deny it. The warehouse sat 3 blocks from the river. Abandoned, fenced off, forgotten. At least, that's what the city record said. But beneath layers of rust and silence, it had been prepared. Motion sensors in the stairwells, thermal tracking buried in the walls. One camera not connected to the cloud watched the main floor. He entered just after midnight. No security team. No entourage, just him, and a chair in the center of the room, facing the only entrance. He set a timer on his watch. 72 hours had become 26, and then 16. He didn't eat, didn't sleep. He waited until the silence breathed. A flick of dust near the ceiling beam. No sound, but he looked up anyway. I was hoping you'd come in the front, he said. Nothing. Then a whisper of fabric behind him. He didn't move. I read your file. The CEO continued. You never miss, never speak, never ask questions. Pause. Then he stood, turned, and faced the man. Silence. He was taller than expected, calm eyes, no rage, no smirk, just stillness. A weapon wrapped in human skin. You're not here for revenge, the CEO said. You're here because someone gave you a number. Still no reply, but that was fine. He didn't need words. He needed witnesses. The small camera in the corner blinked once, recording. Because this wasn't just a fight, it was insurance. If he didn't walk out, that footage would. And what it showed wouldn't be a clean kill. Because the CEO wasn't just a survivor. He had trained for this. He dropped the switch in his pocket. Lights cut. Emergency red filled the room. Then movement. Fast, he's silent. Silence struck first. A blur of bone and shadow. But the CEO ducked, pivoted, grabbed a broken pipe already planted there earlier, and used it to parry. It wasn't elegant. It was desperate. But it bought him seconds. Seconds were all he needed. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about exposing. Have you ever known you can't outrun something? So instead, you shine a light on it. That's what he did. Lured the ghost out of the dark. And when they clashed again, bodies crashing into crates, fists against concrete. The camera caught everything. No context needed. Just proof that the myth called silence was real, and that someone in DC had unleashed him. The fight ended in blood. Both of them down, breathing ragged. But the CEO smiled through it, because he saw the red light still blinking. Recording? You lose, he whispered. Silence blinked once, then for the first time spoke. I wasn't sent to kill you. Pause. I was sent to make you disappear. And that hit harder than any punch. Because disappearance wasn't death. It was erasure. No legacy. No headlines. No proof you ever existed. But thanks to that camera, that plan failed. And now the agency had a choice. Acknowledge they tried to wipe out a decorated hero, or face the kind of leak that could gut the system from the inside. So what happens when the system sees its reflection and doesn't like what it sees? Stick around, because the CEO is about to put the footage in the hands of someone who can't be silenced. And this time, the truth won't just shake careers. It'll split the agency in two. He didn't send it to the media. Not yet. He didn't upload it to any server. Didn't leak it anonymously. Instead, he mailed it on a flash drive inside an unmarked envelope with one sentence. I'm giving you the choice you never gave me. It landed on the desk of Senator Delaney, head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, a man who once toasted Weller's promotion and silently shelved reports that questioned it. He opened the envelope, plugged in the drive, and watched 3 minutes, 26 seconds of raw footage. No music, no edits. Just two men fighting in a warehouse. And one line from a man known only as silence. I wasn't sent to kill you. I was sent to make you disappear. Delaney's hands trembled. He hit pause, rewound, watched it again. Because in that one line everything changed. This wasn't about old military lies anymore. This was about sanctioned disappearances. Black Ops turned inward. Proof that someone in the upper chain had activated illegal assets against a U.S. citizen. And worse, against a war hero. He made the call. 12 minutes later, 3 unmarked vehicles pulled into the Capitol garage. That's how internal hearings begin in Washington. Not with news, with silence. Meanwhile, the CEO sat in his office, alone. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He simply opened his drawer, took out a photo. It showed a group of soldiers laughing in the dust, arms slung around shoulders, before rank, before betrayal. And in the corner, a younger Weller, back when the mission hadn't been stolen yet, back when they were just men trying to survive together. He looked at the picture, then turned it over. On the back, 5 names. One of them crossed out. Not Weller's, Klein's, because Klein hadn't just tried to erase him. He'd erased others before. People who didn't have cameras, who didn't walk away. But now, the camera was rolling, and the country was watching. Within 48 hours, an emergency session was called. Closed doors, sealed files. Delaney stood up and said, "We are not here to protect reputation. We are here to ask why a decorated veteran had to prove his right to exist." You felt that shift, because it wasn't about the CEO anymore. It was about every single name that got lost to silence. And yet, the CEO didn't attend the hearing. He didn't need to. He'd already said what mattered. With one flare, 5 words, and a fight that pulled truth into the light. But one thing still remained. Because even with the system exposed, Klein hadn't been seen since the night of their meeting. No trace, no trail, just a final message encrypted, found days later. If truth wins, tell her she was right. Her, Raina. So next, let's go to the one person he never stopped protecting, even after she vanished from the chessboard. Because if you thought his truth was dangerous, wait until you see what she's been hiding all along. The cabin was buried deep in the Virginia woods. No signal, no road signs, only coordinates the kind you memorize, not write down. He parked the black SUV, stepped out, and listened. Birds, wind, nothing else. Then the door opened. She stood in the frame. Same posture, same eyes. But this time, she didn't speak first. He held up the photo, the one from Echo Ridge, and handed it to her. "His name was in your file," he said. Raina didn't take the picture. She just nodded. "He was my brother." Silence settled between them. Not the awkward kind. The kind that only exists when truth has finally landed. "I knew Klein used him," she said. "I just didn't know how far it went. He never wanted revenge," the CEO said, "just to be remembered." "And now?" she asked. He looked past her at the cabin, the woods, the place she turned into a sanctuary. "Now we give them a voice." She led him inside, walls covered in files. Not just Klein, not just Weller. Others, dozens. Names, faces, missions, footnotes erased from official records. This wasn't just a cabin. It was a museum of the forgotten. "You kept all this?" he asked. "I never stopped." And then she handed him something. A sealed box. Inside, one final drive. Encrypted, time-stamped, untouched since the year of the desert mission. "You were never supposed to see this," she said. "But you earned it." He plugged it into her old terminal. Static, then a video. A soldier, bleeding, holding a flare. The one from the mission. But the camera turns and shows who filmed it. Klein. He was there. He saw it all. And lied anyway. "He watched me run into that storm," the CEO said quietly. Raina nodded. "He watched you become the man he could never control." That footage, it was never meant for public release. But now it would be sent to the committee, to the archives, to the future. Not for applause, not for vengeance, but for truth. And then the final line of the footage. The bleeding soldier turns, stares into the camera, and says, "If they forget this, they'll forget us all." He closed the laptop, walked outside. The sun was breaking through the trees. No fanfare, no headlines, just the soft sound of wind and the weight of finally being seen. Because this wasn't the story of a black CEO who fought back. This was the story of a man who refused to disappear. And maybe that's the real victory. Not survival, but memory. So let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered how many stories get erased because the truth didn't fit the narrative? And if this one almost vanished, how many more are waiting to be told?